All right, guys, there's the passenger side. We have new rotors, new calipers, new pads, new brake hoses, new sway bar end links, new axles, new accumulators, refinished the rear suspension, refinished the diff cover, serviced the differential, installed a new leveling valve. Now tomorrow I'm going to reconnect this rod. We want to test the leveling valve. And new axle. You see our new accumulator up there. And new brakes and hoses over on this side. Guys, that is how you do it. That will be good for the next several decades. Guys, all the cars that you see in these videos are for sale on my website, www.woodsandbarclay.com. Enjoy the video. Hello everyone, welcome back to the series on the 1985 Surf Blue wagon. Now this will be part 6 in the series. In parts 1 through 5, you see all of the interior and all the work being done above on the top side of the car. With the exception of replating the engine. We're going to do that next. All the zinc plating. But today, I'm going to address the suspension. I think there's going to be 2 videos on this. First, I'm going to go to the rear of the car. We're going to put in brand new axles and a brand new SLS valve and brand new accumulators. And then the next video, I'm going to come and do the front suspension, brakes, all that stuff. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay guys, so these are brand new, freshly rebuilt axles. These are genuine Mercedes and they were rebuilt, let's see, July of 2023 over at CV Source, rebooted, re-greased. These are good, for the next 30 years. CV Source in Buford, Georgia is the best for having these axles rebuilt. And over here, I've got the rear accumulators and the original Mercedes SLS leveling valve. That has never been used, never installed on a car, brand new. Okay, oh, and here's the leveling SLS leveling rod. So let's go to the back of the car. And here's why I would like to replace that. So right here we can see this original leveling valve. See how it's all oily? So one of the O-rings maybe in there has, let loose. So we're going to go ahead and replace that. And as far as those are the original accumulators, guys. So this is a 65,000 mile vehicle. It never made it to the point in its life where this needed to be changed. You see that on a lot of these low mileage vehicles. They never actually got to a point where the owners were doing the service on things like this. Now, so we're putting in new accumulators, and right here, these axle boots are not cracked, but if you look closely, they're not leaking, but if you look closely, some cracks have started to form there. Yeah, there's some good cracks there. So they're not leaking yet, but I think they soon would be. So we're going to go ahead, change out these axles. Let's get started. Okay, guys, keep in mind, in another video, we're doing the brakes. We're not doing the brakes in this video, but what we're going to look at over here is we have, I think this is a 13 millimeter, might be a 10, but we need to remove this, and this is what screws into the end of the axle. So we need to go ahead and take that out. And there we go. So we have a spacer, and we have our bolt, and this actually goes into the end of the axle. So you got to take these off on both sides of the car. Okay guys, before we can take the axles out, first we need to drain the differential. So we're going to drain that, and then we're going to remove the differential housing. We'll remove all these bolts here, and then the rear diff bushing. There's 4 bolts up there, and this whole end housing will come off, and then we can get access to take out the C-clips that hold the axles in. Now guys, this will also give us an opportunity, and that's good. That diff fluid is fresh, so this vehicle was recently serviced. But this will also give us the opportunity to clean up and paint our diff housing and reseal it when we put it back on. Okay guys, and I think there are 8 15mm bolts that go around the diff housing, or the diff cover, and we're going to go ahead and start taking those out. Okay guys, when you're doing this job, you need to have a telescoping jack. Now that's going to hold up the differential while I undo the mounting bolts right up there. There's 4 of them and they're 13mm. Okay, so once those are out, I'm going to lower the diff down a little bit so I can get access to that top bolt. There we go. See how the diff is lowering down and it's separating right here? And it's going to come down and the exhaust will just touch our axle over here. There we go. Now we can more easily get a wrench up here to get this top bolt out of the diff cover, and then we can pull this off. I've just lowered down the axle a little more, and I'm going to remove this because I want to put my catch pan underneath here. And then we're going to give a couple of taps, and this diff cover is going to come right off. There we go. And I'll just push out any excess oil here so we don't have it dripping everywhere. And then we're going to inspect the diff and pull out our C-clips that hold the axles in. I'll show you guys how to do that. All right, guys, I want to point out something. You'll notice here there is no sealant around the diff housing or the diff cover. Mercedes did not use sealant. That was a machined surface and it's sealed. So, of course, when we put it back on, we'll put a little sealant there, but Mercedes didn't use that from the factory. Now, here we go. We have our ring and pinion. You can see right in here, that's our axle C-clip. Okay, you guys see I've rotated the diff and the spider gears around, and we can see there's the C-clips, and you have a little, there you go, see you have a little pin, a little hole on the end of them where you can get, I usually put a little wire through there, wrap it around a screwdriver handle and yank them out. All right guys, this is what I like to use to put through the little holes on the end of the C-clip. This is safety wire. I think it's like 0.30, but this is safety wire we use to safety wire like calipers to race cars. But this stuff works great to put through that little hole and pull out the C-clip. Let me show you how. There we go. We can pull that safety wire through. And you can't break this safety wire, guys. This stuff is very strong. So now I'm going to take this and wrap it around a screwdriver handle, and we're going to yank that out of there. There you go. See, that E-clip came right out of there. Now that axle is free to pull out of the car. We'll show that next. Let me get the other side off. All right, guys, here is the trick now to getting the axles out. First, you need to use your telescoping jack, and you got to raise your diff all the way up till it like literally hits the underside of the car, or the floor pan. I guess it would be the trunk pan. Got to go all the way up, as high as it will go. And then you can actually pull these axles out. That gave us clearance to pull the end of the axle out over here. So now we can lift it up a little bit, pull it the other way, and get that side out. Now that we got it out, pull that side out. Almost, just gotta clear that. There we go. And see how easy that was, guys? But the trick is you have to raise this pumpkin. Okay, this is important, guys. When you pull the axle out, right here you can see that's a spacer. There's going to be spacers installed from the factory on both sides. These happen to just stay in place. Sometimes they pull out with the axle. You want to make sure those spacers are put back in on the correct side. So those stayed here. So we're going to slip in our new axle with those existing spacers. That's really important. Here, I'll pull one out so you guys can see it. See if I can get my fingernail on it. There we go. There we go. This one actually has, yep, it's got one spacer. So we'll go ahead and put that back up in there and then slip our new axle in. Guys, before I install this axle, you notice when I took the axle out, it freed up and gave us excellent access to the accumulator. So we're going to go ahead, change this accumulator while we have the axle out. All right, guys, now we have perfect access to the accumulators on both sides. And guys, you don't have to take the axles out to change the accumulators, but it just gives you perfect access when the axles are out. So let's go ahead and undo the hydraulic line that goes to the shock or the strut and the hard line that goes to the leveling valve. All right, hopefully my big head is not going to be in the way, but I think the line right there is a 17. And we'll take this nut out. Now you have crush washers on this line, guys. So you want to make sure you replace your crush washers when you put in the new accumulator. All right, there you go. Now it's just dripping into a bucket on the shop floor. Okay, this one, here's the number 11 wrench. And again, it's a line wrench because I don't want to strip this. All right, there we go. Crack that one loose. There we go. There we go. Now we got our hard line out. As you can see right here, there's a 13 millimeter here and here. So now that we have our lines off, we can just put our 13 millimeter up here. And then there is one on the back. There's 1, 2, 3, and there's one right back here. So let me go ahead and get that one out. And there we go, guys. It's that easy. All right, guys, I'm just going to show you real quick why these fail. So what this accumulator is, the hydraulic fluid for the rear self-leveling system, it comes in here and fills this, this canister. Now, about halfway through the canister, there is a rubber diaphragm. And on the other side of that diaphragm is compressed nitrogen gas. Now, the reason for that is because the fluid is not compressible. So in the hydraulic system, if you were to hit a bump and it compressed your rear hydraulic shocks, the fluid has nowhere to compress. So Mercedes designed this nitrogen-filled canister with a diaphragm, so when you hit a bump, the fluid presses into this canister, hits the diaphragm, and the nitrogen is compressible. So that diaphragm will squish back and then squish back forward, and it gives you a smooth compressing suspension. That's what these are for. Now, if you notice inside here, let's see, now this is just a blunt tip, and I'm going to stick it in here. See, we go all the way to the end. That diaphragm is ruptured. See, we stuck it in this far. Now, in this new accumulator, I don't want to stick anything in there because I don't want to mess with that diaphragm. But if we were to stick, see, this goes all the way through like that. See, that's all the way to the back. If I were to stick that in here, it would stop about halfway because it would hit our diaphragm. So let's go ahead and get the fresh new accumulator installed on the car. And guys, I just wanted to show you, this is the original equipment manufacturer. If you look right here, made in Germany. These are not cheap Chinese aftermarket parts. Okay guys, we have our brand new accumulator installed. Next, we want to put back in a hydraulic line with new crush washers. Now I've already got a copper crush washer there, and here's a new one here. That keeps it from leaking. So we'll put that through there. We'll pull out our plug. We'll put the other one on this side, and we'll get this threaded in here. And we'll tighten it down with a 17 millimeter. All right, now this one, let's pull this one out. Might have been better to put this bottom one in first. That's more like a brake line. It's a flared fitting. All right, now let's go ahead and snug those down. And you want to tighten it until you feel your crush washers actually crush. There we go. Now let's get our 11mm and tighten our flare nut. All right, that's good. Now when we fill the system and crank the vehicle, we'll check for leaks. But let's go ahead and dry this off a little up here, and we'll do the other side and get our axles back in. And we're going to clean under the car really good when we're done doing all the work. All right, very nice. Look at that beautiful new accumulator. Okay guys, I'm going to see if I can easily get this axle back in. We're going to come right here around that brake line because that's how we came out. Okay. Okay, there we go. There we go. Just need to push it inwards. There we go. I can get the end of the axle in right there. Straighten it out a little. There we go. Now we can pull it. Just got to rotate it. There we go. All right. We have the axle back in. Now we need to put our C-clip back in the end of the axle. All right, guys, this might be hard to see, but you see the end of our axle and you see the little groove? There's a little groove in it. We need to get our C-clip pressed back into there. Our C-clip back right up in there. Okay. Then I'm going to stick a small punch right there on the end. And I'm just going to tap it with a rubber mallet. And there we go. That C-clip, there we go. That C-clip is back in place. All right, guys, I'm going to do the other side of the car, and then we'll be done with the axles and accumulators. Okay, guys, we have both of our C-clips back in here. And now what I do after that, I put a wooden dowel right here, and I tap on it with a mallet. I forgot to record that, and that'll spread this joint out just a little bit and tap it into the hub, and you can see there is the hole that our bolt and spacer screws back into, which we have right here. Now we need to put a little blue Loctite on there before we reinstall it. Okay, we have a little blue Loctite. We're going to do the driver's side first, and we're just going to put a dab right there, guys. I think I got it in there. Let's see if we can get that to start threading in there. All right, there we go. And then we'll tighten that down. I'm over here at the parts washer, and we just want to go ahead and clean up our diff housing before I install it back on the car. And I think these were painted black from the factory. Yeah, they were painted black from the factory. You see, there's some of the black paint. So we'll hit it with some black paint before installing it back on the car. Okay, before we reattach our diff cover, I just want to take a razor blade and make sure this surface is very clean. That way we get a good seal, and then I'm going to dry it with some acetone, and we're just going to put on a small bead of sealant. Acetone is a great cleaning agent. All right. All right, that is a very clean surface. Okay, guys, I have some sealant, or gasket sealant. Our gasket maker. And we're just going to put a small bead right around here, right there on the bottom. We'll get one started right there on the side. And that should locate it for us. That way I can let go and go grab the other bolts. Okay guys, we have our diff cover reinstalled, our bolts torqued down. You can see our little sealant we put there just to ensure there's absolutely no leaks. Now we're going to raise the diff by turning the screw jack, or telescoping jack, and we're going to put in our 13mm bolts up at the top. All right, there we go. That's right back in the factory location. Now we want to put a little blue Loctite on the bolts that go in there. All right, guys, you see I got my blue Loctite on there. And I'm just going to start these by hand. We'll go just underneath here and okay guys, we repainted the diff cover, have the diff mount reinstalled, have our new axles in, have our new accumulators, and guys, I couldn't stand it. I hate when the interior and up top side of the car looks great, but the underside doesn't. So I went ahead and refinished all of the original suspension parts, preserved the original markings on the springs, and still have the original yellow marking here. But our new axles are installed, beautifully refinished suspension. And the next thing we want to tackle, there we go, doesn't that look nice, guys? So we can get that to brighten up. Very nice. New axles, beautiful new accumulators. Now the next thing we want to tackle is get this leaky old leveling valve out of here and install a brand new leveling valve. All right, before we move to that leveling valve, let's go ahead, put some fresh 80W90 gear oil in our differential. And you just fill it till it comes out of the fill hole. And there we go, guys. That is full. It's coming out of the fill hole. We put our cap back on. And there we go, guys. Let's move to the leveling valve. All right, first thing we want to do on this leveling valve is detach the leveling rod. We're going to be installing a new genuine Mercedes rod. Now we want to disconnect all these lines. We have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's our rod out of the way. All right, guys, I've got all the lines disconnected, and there's some lock nuts, and there's 2 of them that actually hold this leveling valve on, so we're just getting those off now. All right, now this thing can come out of here. Get the lines out of the way, and there we go. There's that janky old leveling valve. All right, you'll see here, you don't undo these 2. Those hold the valve together. It's the bottom right one here and the top one here. Those are the ones we want to transfer for the new valve. Okay, here we have our leveling valve rod. Here's the original one that came off the car. That's just an old original one. So our new one, which is genuine Mercedes. See the Mercedes logo right there. We want to make sure it's the same length. So I've made the adjustments in the middle and made it the same length. And guys, these are just little ball joints, and it moves in there. So we'll get that leveling rod, the top, attached before we install our new valve. Okay, when you're installing the rod, this side is a 10mm, and then this side right here has a flat on it, and it actually takes a 9mm. You can get a 9mm on there while you tighten the 10mm, and then that's on there, and it's much easier to do when the valve is out of the way. So we'll push that rod just to the side, and I've cleaned up all the lines up here and cleaned up the mounting bracket. Now let's get our valve installed. Okay, here's the valve, guys. Here's our new, because you want, there's 2 lines there, 2 lines there, and there's your bleeder. So you want to make sure you install it in this position. So I'm just going to try to get the nuts at least on the back. Let's get these lines out of the way. It's kind of tricky to work around the lines. Okay, there's the bottom one. And get these lines out of the way. And there's our top one. All right. Now I'm just going to put the nuts on the back to hold it in place, and then we'll tighten those down. Now, these bottom lines right here, these two, those require, they have little adapters that we have to take off the other valve and actually screw into here. I'll show you. Here we go. Here's our greasy old valve, and see we have an adapter there and there. So we want to take these adapters off and transfer them over to the new valve. Okay, I've got our bleeder screw, one adapter. Now here's the other adapter, and this adapter does require a copper crush washer. See, I've got a new one on there. So let's go ahead and put these in our new leveling valve. All right, first thing I want to do is undo our plugs. Now we want to put in our top adapter first, because you can't tighten it down if you put the bottom one in first. Now this is aluminum, guys, so you don't go cranking down like crazy. All right, we'll put that in. All right, now it's 17 millimeter. We'll snug it up. And that crush washer is going to do the work. All right, there we go. That's snug. Now, I'm going to go ahead and put this top line right in there. Guys, you don't want to force it, because if you cross thread them, you're going to screw up your fitting or your adapter, and that's no fun. You don't want to do that. So let's go ahead and get this one snugged up. And then we're going to move to those upper lines that don't require adapters. And we have the upper lines and then the bleeder to put in. All right, guys, after about 20 minutes of cussing, I have the top two lines in, the bottom lines, and now we need to remove that cap right up top and put our bleeder in. There we go. We're going to tighten that down with a 12 millimeter. I think it's 11 millimeter, guys. Sorry about that. It's 11 millimeter. All right, we'll tighten that bleeder in. There we go. That's good. And now let's connect our leveling arm. Actually, guys, before I tighten this up, I'm going to test the leveling system manually without this arm connected. I'm going to put the car down on ramps, and we're going to, fill the system back up with fluid because we lost a lot during this process, and I'm going to actuate this arm manually. That is a way you can easily test it from under the car with the car on ramp. So let me take that off there. I'll just put our nut and lock washer on the end of it, and we'll install that later. And there's our beautiful brand new leveling valve and leveling valve rod, our new axles, our new accumulators. And you know what I'm going to do in this video too, guys? I'm going to go ahead and do the rear brakes. That way the entire rear end is completely done, and we can move over to the front end. All right, guys, before we test our SLS system, I want to go ahead and do the brakes and hoses, pads, rotors on the rear. That way we can be completely done with the rear of the car. Now, these are original ATE calipers and rotors. These are not rebuilt. These are what Mercedes actually installed on the vehicle from the factory. And these are expensive, guys, several $100s. And these are wagon calipers. The wagon calipers are different than sedan calipers. And the wagon calipers have a larger piston, so it gives more clamping force for the added weight of the wagon. So let's go ahead and install these on the rear of the car. All right, guys, before I remove the caliper, I've got a 14 millimeter on here, and I want to go ahead and break loose the brake line There we go. It's just loose. That way I can get it off easier when the caliper's off. And what I'm going to do is remove the caliper. There's two 19mm bolts behind here. I've already loosened them up. Here they are. I'll take it off, and then I'm going to remove the caliper and just plug the line so it doesn't drip everywhere. All right, there we go. Let's get that guy off of here. And we can just let it hang. Okay, you see I went ahead and took out the pads, but I have these little green caps that fit over the end of the brake hoses. So here's a new brake hose. I'll set this aside. I'm going to unscrew this one and then cap it so we don't lose our brake fluid. And of course we'll bleed the system later. And I've capped it. There we go. Now we're not going to lose a bunch of fluid. And we can go up here and remove our line and screw in our new line. Put our 14mm on there to hold it still. There we go. And we've cracked that top one loose. So we can now unscrew this. Now we're gonna lose just a little fluid, but not much. All right, there we go. Throw a new line down there. Throw our old line on the ground, and let's get our new line threaded. And there we go. That way you don't lose tons of brake fluid, guys. There we go. All right, now we can take our new caliper and actually screw it onto the line before installing it on the car. Now, before we do that, I want to go ahead and pop off this rotor and put on a fresh rotor. There we go. Look how good that surface is. Not even any rust on there. Oh, I see somebody put some anti-seize on here before. Thank you, previous mechanic. All right, and it looks like there's plenty of anti-seize left on there, so nothing's gonna rust. And let's put on our new rotor. There we go. Now let's get our caliper and put it on here. All right, guys, I'm gonna pop our cap off, and then I'll just put my thumb over the end of it. Now, I like to screw the caliper on while it's not mounted on the car, because then your brake line doesn't get all twisted when you do it that way. Try to get it started here. There we go. And we'll snug that up once it's on the car. But now, see, when we put our brake line up here, it's not all twisted. All right, let me get a rag, just wipe off some of that brake fluid. All right, now ATE or ATE sends some fresh hardware, so we're going to put in some new bolts. All right, here's the new bolts that ATE provides, and they include the Loctite pre-installed on the bolts. So we're just going to lift this caliper right up here. See if we can get a couple of them started by hand. There's one. And there we go. There's the other. There we go. Right how I like it. Make sure this is snug back here. There we go. Now let's run down our bolts in the back and put in our pads. All right, now we need to torque those with a torque wrench. And in the meantime, let's go ahead and put in our pads. ATE has the easiest pad installs. You slip your pads in like that. Ooh, that's a snug fit. Okay, so they provide these little pins, right? And these pins have little lead like crush washers on the end. And so when you put your retainer, or your pad retainer in here, this pin is going to slide through here like so, and then go through the little hole on the other side, and you actually tap them through, and it crushes this little crush washer and holds them in place. Okay, here's our little punch. We'll put it right there and just tap those Tap those right through there. There you go. Those are installed. All right, guys, there's the fresh brakes and rotors installed with hoses and new pads. Let's go ahead and knock out the other side, and then we're done with everything on the rear end. All right, guys, there's the passenger side. We have new rotors, new calipers, new pads, new brake hoses, new sway bar end links, new axles, new accumulators, refinished the rear suspension, refinished the diff cover, serviced the differential, installed a new leveling valve. Now tomorrow I'm going to reconnect this rod. We want to test the leveling valve. And new axle. You see our new accumulator up there. And new brakes and hoses over on this side. Guys, that is how you do it. That will be good for the next several decades. All right, let's get the car lowered down on the ground. We're going to put the wheels on, and we're going to put it on ramps, and we're going to fill our hydraulic system, and we're going to manually actuate our lever, and we're going to make sure the hydraulic system is working correctly. Okay, so you see how I have the vehicle on ramps on the front and the rear, and our lift is no longer supporting the car. So what this is going to allow me to do is crawl up under the car and test that leveling valve while the car is running, and we're going to see if the car goes up and down, and we can watch that from under the car, and I'll show you guys. And we just lost a little bit of the hydraulic fluid when we were doing the accumulators. So I have a bunch of fluid over here. There we go. This is the stuff. Phoebe actually sells it. So I'm going to go ahead and top off the system and then put our cap back in, and we're going to crank up the car and test it out. Okay, guys, the car is cranked, and I actually have a little rubber hose hooked up to the bleeder valve, bleeder screw, and I'm going to bleed the air out of the system. And I have a little bucket here that I just have attached to it. There we go. I'm going to let that run through just a little bit to get the air out. All right. I'm going to go ahead and tighten it up now. And got a couple of bubbles in the system. Now the system is self-bleeding, but I'm just helping it by getting a lot of the big air pockets out of there. All right. I'm gonna hold the camera right here, and when I move this leveling valve arm, the car and the exhaust are gonna raise up, but the wheels and the axles are gonna stay stationary. So what we want to do is watch the axle boot right here. I'm gonna put the valve up. We're going to do this a couple more times. Just go ahead and lower the system. Ready? I'm going to pull the handle. I'm going to pull the valve. Beautiful. See how it lowered back down? All right, now we're back to level. Now I'm going to go raise it again, and you guys watch it lift. All right, guys, this is our beautiful new SLS back here, and what we want to do now is check for any leaks. And I can see we're bone dry right here, no leaks or drips. Excellent, no leaks or drips here. Looks like we got it the first time, guys. There we go, just checking up here. No leaks, no dripping. Awesome. Mission accomplished. So what we're going to do now, I have a industrial fluid extractor right there. And what we'll do, we'll just drop that into the reservoir, suck out all the old fluid, put in a bunch of new fluid, and then crack the bleeder on the back, pump out any old fluid that was in the system until we have it run clean with new fluid, and then we are done and time to move to the next part of the vehicle. All right, mission accomplished, guys. That is a perfectly working SLS system, and we'll see you in the next video where I'm going to start on the front of the car. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you next time.